All right, guys, welcome back. Yeah, I'm gonna make this episode about just the cylinder heads. So thank you guys for joining Cherezian Racing. I'm Ryan, and I'm not gonna make this video have anything to do with the last video about my Duramax diesel truck because I found some problems with it. One of the cylinder heads is pitted, and it's just a mess. So it's gonna take me a while to get everything ready for that thing to go back together. So this is just gonna be about the cylinder heads and me putting them back together and what I've had to do to them so far, and just showing you guys how I assemble them and give you all the specs on them. And that will kind of be one of the last things for this motor that's under this big old box here for the double trouble hobby stock. So let me just get right to it. These are, like I said in the last video, an 041 casting cylinder head, which is pretty dang good. These are basically the camel humps, or the fuelie heads, as some people like to call them, but they have accessory holes in the front. The same performance and everything as the camel humps, but just the newer design. And so basically they're pretty much stock. You know, they got the stock valve sizes and everything. Not really been touched at all, but I did have to have them surfaced because I think it was this one right here. It was 3/1000 warped on the deck surface here. So I had them sent out to my machine shop. He had them surfaced, so they're perfectly straight now because we're going to be running a really small 15,000 steel shim head gasket on this motor here to get the quench right. So I needed them to be perfectly flat, which they are now. And let me show you the hardware that I'm putting in these bad boys. All right, so it's kind of nice being a redneck and having a bunch of stuff lying around, engine parts or whatnot, because these springs right here I had lying around, and they're the exact springs that I needed as far as spring pressures go and the size. So I have them laid out here. I checked them all on my homemade valve spring checker here. Just an old dummy gauge. You guys have probably seen me use it in episodes prior if you've been around for a long time on Cherezian Racing. If not, that's how I do it. I got them all organized there. And so these are the valves that came with the cylinder heads when I got them. They actually did come with the hobby stock when I bought them, so it's kind of a score there. These valves are 20216, so they are the big valves. And what I've done is I've refaced them all, as you can see, and just clean them up real good, make sure they're not bent. And I did have to replace a couple of them because a couple of them were a little bit wobbly when I spun them with the drill. So they're all not bent now and pretty much ready to go in there. And so what I've done is I've refaced them with my New Way cutter set here, and I also did a 3-angle valve job on the heads. So that's all done. And I just checked them. They are 64 cc's on the combustion chamber. I just cc'd them with my tools. I forgot to mention that the older fuelie heads that didn't have the accessory holes here, they were actually smaller chamber. Those were 62 cc's, these are 64. So they're a little bigger on the chamber size, but like I said, I did check them and they are still 64 cc's. So we're gonna be good on the compression there. I just got some hard, I think these are comp cam retainers, 7-degree retainers that I had lying around, so that's free. But what I did have to get is these guys right here. These are ID valve spring locators. Let me show you what that's all about here. So this is kind of a weird deal. I've not seen this before on a stock cylinder head, but check it out. So this is supposed to be a stock size valve spring, and these are the stock size valve pockets that have not been modified before. And so if I put them on, let's just say I put them on this exhaust valve right here, they fit in there, and if I move them back and forth, there's really not much movement. That's what you want. You want that valve spring to be very solidly located. But if you look, it's getting located right here in the ID, and so that exhaust valve looks the same, and the exhaust valve over here looks the same. But check this out, the intake valves have been either cut down by the factory or somebody else cut them, and then the exhaust valve on the other side here has also been cut. So if I put the spring on there, look at this. That is not good. So what I had to do is I had to buy an ID locator, which basically, let's see if I can do this one-handed, goes right there in the center of the spring and locates it basically around the valve guide here. But as you can see, they don't go down all the way. So I've already modified this head right here. What I've had to do is I had to cut down that. As you can see now, they will go all the way down. And that's pretty much what you want. And so now I've put that valve on there. I mean, it's a really tight fit. I almost got to pop it on there, but it's solidly located. And located on the ID of the valve guide here. So the weird thing is you can see that there's a couple of these pockets here that have been ground down a little bit with these two exhaust valves in the center here. and this one, and that is from me taking my die grinder to it, because, like I said, on both cylinder heads, these exhaust valves here were modified compared to the other ones here. So what I had to do was modify them. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I went to research these guys. The only ones I found that would fit my valve springs on the ID good like that were about, I think these guys are 520 thousandths on the inside diameter. And these cylinder heads originally came with seals that were 500 right there. That's a 1/2 inch. But as you can see, it's not 1/2 inch on the bottom. So they are now. I had to buy this cutter here. This is a Comp Cams HRC 29035, and I had to modify it, as you guys can see. I hogged out the inside big time with my die grinder here. Hogged it out, and there was also another cutter right here that would cut the top of the valve guide and like kind of shave it down. So the reason I modified it is because, yeah, it cuts the 500, so it basically would go down, well, I'll show you in a second, but it would go down here and then it start digging in and taking off material down here at the bottom, but then at the same time it started taking this and bringing this down, down, down. And you don't want that, because if you can get away with having a longer valve guide and not shaving it down, it's more sturdy. So basically what I've done is, you see that line right there? That line right there is something I made with a Sharpie, because if I put my finger down here where the valve guide ends in there, that Sharpie line is right there, and that's the length of the guide. And so when I measured that, that is just over 2 inches. And really you don't want a valve guide that's shorter than 2 inches, because when you start getting them shorter than that, then you lose stability on the valve. They wear out quicker. It doesn't take as much heat out of the valve. There's not as much heat transfer. So I really don't want to freaking shave these guides all the way down here. So that's why I modified it. And it kind of sucks, because this guy was a $8 cutter. These things are not cheap. And I literally just boogered it up, but it got done what I wanted to get done, and that is just take the valve guide and bring it 500 thousandths all the way down to the bottom of the spring pocket here. So when I did that, sure, this guy fits nice and good in there, because I measured the OD, and this is a 1.3 OD ID locator, and this is 1.3, this is 1.3, this is 1.3, and lo and behold, this one, that one, and that one, the ones that had the weird, like, bigger valve guide boss, were smaller. These are 1.29. So when I put them on here, they would hit. They wouldn't go all the way down. So instead of me buying another one of these cutters, I don't even know if they make it a cutter that goes 1.3 or something like that. Normally they're 1.55 or so. Instead of buying another one of those, I literally took my die grinder and hogged it out big time to open it up, and now they go on there and sit flush, just like the rest. So one cylinder head's done. I'm gonna do this one. I'll show you guys how I do it. It's really fast and simple. It's like, this thing's magic. Look at that. Perfect. Super quick. And then I'm just gonna do the rest of them. I'll show you how to do it. And then when I get to these guys, I'll show you how to hog them out. All right, that was all the metal I took off. So you can see they're all now flush and looking good. This guy on this exhaust valve guide right there fits down perfect, and there is like absolutely minimal play. So the ID locator fits the valve guide super tight. The valve spring fits the ID locator super tight. That is good valve train stability right there. That's a happy spring. It's gonna be less wear and tear on the valve guide and more life with the springs, all that. There are a couple of these valve guides that are a little bit loose for me. Some of them just have a little bit too much play, but it's a hobby stock. It's not a lot of horsepower, and you know, I'd rather have more clearance than less clearance. So it's not horrible at the end of the world, but it is what it is. So I'm not gonna replace the guys or anything like that. I'm just gonna go ahead and, as the young kids say, send it. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead here and start hogging this out a little bit. Doesn't take too long. All right. Yeah, I know my garage is a total freaking disaster, but I got way too many projects going on with the diesel, the hobby stock, and God knows what else. Super truck when it comes ready. It's almost season time for us to go racing. It's like about a month and a half away from practice races, so it's coming up fast. Let's do this for you guys real quick. Got a little pointy finger on here, and no cutting on the bottom, so I'm not going to be, pushing in and cutting into the valve spring pocket there. I'm just going to be taking off the edge, just like this. All right, just like that, they're all done. They sit down there flush. I try to wobble them back and forth, and they're not going nowhere. So I know it's all even all the way around, and it's sitting flush like it should be. So yeah, it doesn't look that great. And I know some of you guys are probably thinking, oh, why didn't you just get the bigger cutter? Cut it to a bigger size, like a 1.5. Well, check it out. I'd like to do that because I know it wouldn't matter, Even if I do cut it bigger, this is going to locate it on the inside, so that wouldn't matter. But the thing of the matter is, I've heard that these double hump and fuelie heads, if you cut these valve spring pockets bigger, there's like water right there. And so depending what size you cut it to, you may or may not hit water. I just don't want to chance it. And really, this is not modifying the cylinder head. For anybody that might think this is, illegal stuff. No, it's not modifying the cylinder head at all. These ones are correct. You're just fixing the ones that are not. So that's my 2 cents on it. They're all done. All right, guys. It's a whole 49 degrees in here. Just fired up the heater because I just got back from work. It is a Thursday, about 8 o'clock or so, and I'm cold, but I'm running the heater. I don't run it that often just because it sucks down a lot of electricity and hits me pretty good on the PG&E bill. But I'm running it tonight because I want to bust out these cylinder heads. But it is a thirsty Thursday, and it's been a long time since I've done this before. Let's see, I remember how to freaking fill a float bowl, as old hot car will say. So nothing that will fill you up a little better and warm you up from the inside out than good old Gentleman Jack. Get a nice little hefty pour. Of course, Pepsi. None of that Coke shit. Let me teach you guys about the perfect whiskey to Pepsi ratio. Ready? There we go. And that right there is how you prevent diabetes. Just a little bit of soda. Can't forget the tunes either. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and use some compressed air and blow the crap out of these cylinder heads. Hit them real good with brake clean, get all the freaking dirt and metal material that might be in there, metal dust, out of it, clean it up really good. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just start throwing it together and finally finish this job, because it's taking way too long to get these cylinder heads done. All right, got them all cleaned up. Now I'm lapping the valves in, hand lapping the valves in. A little bit of valve grinding compound on there. Let's see if we can see what we're riding on here. We're looking for a nice gray line all the way around it. Let's see if I can turn on the Fleming Filmy Racing light here. Oh yeah. Gray marking is all the way around, same width, and it's basically right dead center in the middle of the valve 45-degree angle there. So right on the money. That's the exhaust valve. All right, just did the second one, which is the intake valve, and I don't know if you can see it, but the gray line on the intake valve is towards the bottom, but it's not all the way on the bottom. There's still a little bit of shiny area below that, but the gray on the bottom is good because it helps flow. And what I'm going to do in a second here is I'm going to put a back cut on this valve, about a 30-degree angle, and shave it down. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a little bit, but that's the plan, is to put a back cut on these intake valves. Just like that, baby. Up and down, back and forth a couple times. Not real hard pressure, but just enough on there to get it seated in. All right, now that I got the valves lapped in, both cylinder heads are all done. I told you guys I'd show you how I did the back cut on the valves, the intake valves here. So this is my kit. Like I said, it's a new way cutter set. And And here it is. So it's got this bottom piece that goes in the vise. You know, it's like having a machine shop in your garage, basically. You got a vise and you can buy this kit right here. It's all good. And then you have this cutter tool here. Let me take the valve out and show you what it is all about. So if you want to reface your valves, you have your 45-degree cutters here. And that's what I use to reface these guys. And when you want to put a back cut on there, you have a 30-degree on the other side. So right there. So that's what I'm about to do. It's literally simple. You put it in there. Like I said before, that gray line on the bottom, you can see all the way around the valve. I'm going to take that back cut, that 30-degree back cut, and bring it basically right down to where it almost touches that gray line. And that's going to give this valve and the cylinder head a lot of really good low lift flow. So when like the valve is just starting to open in the cylinder head, like 100 thousandths, 200 thousandths, 300 thousandths, that back cut right there really helps, you know, the air come around the valve easier. So that's what I'm going to do right here, and it's really simple, and it does work pretty good. It's very effective. So let me show you the simple way to do this thing. So basically you have this lever right here, and this is on a cam. So when you push this lever, it pulls up on this bearing right here when it will start getting a lot of pressure here on the valve. But you want to pretty much bring it down to the lowest setting, and then what you're going to do here is you're going to tighten this clamp, which basically pinches this valve. There's a little bit of a centering hole in the middle here, and what it does is it pinches the valve, so the valve is not going to move anywhere at all. But you want to make sure that the valve is pushed down all the way, and then you tighten it up. And you can see I just pushed it up a little bit. It's hard to do with one hand. Let me see if I can do this guy a little better here. All right, tighten it real good, so that valve ain't going nowhere now. All right, and then what you do is you basically spin this guy, and as you spin this guy, you go ahead and pull this lever up little by little, and you'll start feeling pressure on there, and then it'll start cutting. And yeah, I need two hands for this one as well, but anyways, you guys get the gist. That's all it is. And you go ahead and pull the valve out and check it out and see where you're running at. If you got to go more to get closer to that gray line, you just go more. So that's how I do it. All right, so this basically what it looks like. Not really sure if the camera's gonna pick this up very well, but that back cut's very shiny and it comes right down to that gray line. And if you can see, probably not, but there's two angles. So it comes off the valve and then it goes down to a 30, and then the 45 is a little bit steeper. It's not gonna come in, but that's what it looks like. Helps flow a lot. All right, that's it. All 8 intake valves are all done. Some of you guys probably are wondering right now, why don't I do the exhaust valves? You know, I'm putting a back cut on the intake valves. What's wrong with the exhaust valves? Well, that if you put a back cut on the exhaust valve, it actually helps reversion more than it helps flow out the exhaust. So that's why I don't do the exhaust valve. Just if anybody's wondering why that's over your head, then it is what it is. But if you know what I'm talking about, then you can understand what I'm getting at. Reversion is not something you want in an engine. Reversion is bad. It's like EGR. It's like exhaust gases back up your intake track. You don't want that. All right, just got through with one cylinder head all assembled, and I just got my spark plugs in the mail. I'm gonna be running these Autolite AR72s because these are the older style cylinder head spark plugs where they're really short on the reach. Look how small that is. It's like 0.35, I think, on the reach. But the only problem is they got a big old honking 11/16 size hex on there, which kind of sucks. But these are the right ones for these older cylinder heads. And Amazon had them for a 4-pack, was 11 bucks. So I got, I think, all 8 of them for just under 25 bucks, which is a hell of a deal. It's like $3 a plug, not bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this one right here and let you guys see what I'm doing and how I assemble it. I just wanted to get one done because I'm kind of trying to go a little faster. I want to get this motor done sooner than later. All right, so I'm just gonna run through this really quick on kind of what I check when I'm assembling these cylinder heads. Obviously I got all the valves in here, and what I do before I put the valves in is I get this brush right here, the valve guide brush, and I go up and down and get them all real clean, and then after that I hit them really good with some brake clean and flush all it out. And then after it's all dry and clean, I'll go ahead and hit it with WD-40 to really rinse anything that else might be in there out. And then I use some motor oil here to get all the guides lubed up, and then I'll stick the valve in. It's got to be a clean valve, obviously. Make sure everything is really clean when you're assembling it. And then what I do when I check my valve guide to valve stem clearance, as I go ahead and I take these valves up here at the very top, and I'll go ahead and push it down just a little bit, you know, just like, you know, a couple hundred thousandths or whatever, and then I'll go ahead and try to wiggle it. And this one right here is tight, so I know that's a good valve. This one right here and this one right here, this is the intake valve of cylinder 7, this is the exhaust valve of cylinder 5. They're both loose, so you can see, I'll push it down a little bit. You see, you can see that oil down there kind of like moving around. It's because it's just a little bit looser than the rest. It's not horrible, like I said, it's not, you know, the end of the world, but they are loose, so I just know that they're looser than the rest. But that's how I check the valve guide clearance. I don't do any kind of measuring, nothing like that, just all by feel. You don't want to be super tight. You want to have some clearance, but not too much. So now that they're in the head, I'll go ahead and throw the ID locators here for the springs on. And then I already told you guys that I checked these springs and I have them organized here from this is the least amount of spring pressure to the highest amount of spring pressure. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and check the installed height where I put the retainer on, put the keepers on, and show you how to do this really quick. Super simple. But this is your installed height here of the spring. So lock that guy down. This is my tool. I've showed you guys this in the past. I'm showing you again. It's really old and worn out. You can barely see the numbers on there, but that's how I check it. So I'll go ahead and stick that guy down there, and I'm measuring here from the shim, the ID locator up, and then you go ahead and pull the valve all the way up and you measure where that retainer's at. And so I've written down here all the installed heights. 26 means 26 out of 32,000, so that is this is like 1.78 installed height. These are stock size valves, are not long or anything, so that's about normal for a small block Chevy, 1.78. But you can see that some of them are a little bit different. This one's high. This is 28,000, so that might mean that either this valve right here is a little bit longer, or I might have done the valve job a little bit too much. So it's a little bit different. So what I've done is when I measured these guys on my my press here, you know, I get them all in there, and it's super simple to use this thing. You literally put this valve spring in there, smash it, read your number. And so what I'll do is I'll put the highest rated spring, this one, on the largest size installed height. So this 28 right here is the low number. So I'll put the more spring pressure on there to kind of compensate it. So, you know, when this guy's closed, it'll be about the same as the tighter one over here, because this will have a normal size, or a normal, you know, maybe I'll put the lesser spring on this one, and so they'll be more blueprinted, you know. So it's not like you're putting the heaviest spring on the smallest installed height and throwing everything else off, you know. Just try to get it even and, you know, as blueprinted as you can doing it this way. You can see a line right here and a line right here. And what I've done is check this out real good. And look at that. There's a hunk missing right there. So it looks like when this cylinder head was run last time, I guess the rocker arm chewed into it or something real bad. Don't know what that's all about. And this one right here, I noticed is bent. You look down here. Here, I actually use this guy right here. Kind of has like a straight edge here. And yeah, they're all touching, and then boom, that guy's way off. So maybe the cylinder head was dropped or something, and it bent that guy. But I got 2 new ones. I'll go ahead and replace these guys. Keep on trucking. Yeah, you can see that guy's a little bit bent. So on these small block Chevys, this threaded hole here for the rocker stud goes right in the water. So you got to make sure when you put new ones in, you put some type of thread locker on there so it seals up from all the coolant that'll get blasted. So be liberal with this stuff. Alright, these guys are replaced. Now I'm going to put the seals on. Without some seals, pretty simple. They just literally pop right on, and take a socket, push them on. That's all she wrote. All right, now that I got all the valve seals on there, all I gotta do is compress this valve spring with my little compressor tool here. Pretty trick. It screws onto the rocker stud. And then obviously don't want to forget the retainer. All right. And then it's easy as just hooking up a little power pipe on it. Pushing her down. And then I can get my keepers on. All right. It's the last of them. All right, guys, so it is absolutely dumping outside. So it looks like I gotta spend more time in the shop. All right, guys, watching a little bit of foosball here, as Bobby Boucher's mama would say, and about ready to throw these cylinder heads on. So they're both assembled, ready to go on the block. And I'm right now cleaning up the block and getting it ready for the heads to go on. So let's just talk about what's going on here. I told you guys that we're running the Felpro 1094 steel shim head gasket, and it has a compressed thickness of 15 thousandths, which is really, really, really thin. I mean, look at this thing. It's like almost paper thin. It's a steel shim, obviously. And let's just talk about why I'm running that. So the reason I'm running that is because we have this block here. So you have the deck surface here of the block, and then you have the pistons. And when the pistons are at TDC, like this one is right here, see these numbers right here, 032, 030, 035. That is the distance between the top of this piston to the block. So this piston is technically in the hole 32 thousandths, which is not great. Normally, I'd like to see these guys about flush, so like 0 would be ideal, and you can put all of your quench area in your head gasket. So what is quench? It might be over your head. You can just fast forward a little bit if you want to skip this part, but quench is the distance between the top of the piston here at TDC to the bottom of the cylinder head flat part. So let's just go ahead and, I got so many cylinder heads over here. Talk about this. This is my IMCA cylinder head, but let's just imagine that the head gasket's on there and the piston comes up and the combustion chamber's here, and there's also this flat area right here. So it'd be the distance between when the piston's up here to the flat part of the cylinder head. That is your quench number. And the tighter the quench you can get, the tighter you can get that piston up closer to the cylinder head. It forces more of the fuel molecules and induction gases into the combustion chamber, and your spark plug is here. So if you can get most of that, you know, air and fuel mixture in the combustion chamber, and then you light it off, you're gonna have a better burn, you're gonna create more power, and you're gonna have less chance of detonation, because if you had the piston farther down, let's say, you know, let's just say like a really bad situation, like 70 thousandths of your quench height. And so you have all these combustion gases over here, this lights off over here and it goes boom, and then it tries to light over here, and it's really gotta travel far, and it's just not as gonna be as a complete burn. So you wanna get that tight. I usually try to set these dirt track motors that are basically what I've been running on gasoline to 35 thousandths. That's my go-to number. So I can't get that obviously, because you can see this one's 35 thousandths in the hole already. So you have to run a head gasket. You just can't bolt the cylinder head right to it. So I have to use as small as a head gasket I can possibly run. In this case, that I believe this piston right here, this is cylinder number 2, is the farthest one in the hole, because the rest are a little bit higher. So 35 thousandths is the worst case scenario. And so you add 15 thousandths to that, that's 50 thousandths of quench, which is not great. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. It's the best I can possibly get. The only way to change that would be to surface this deck right here, maybe take like 10 thousandths off or 15 thousandths off or whatever, and that would bring the pistons closer to the surface, obviously, but that costs money, taking the block to the machine shop. So I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to get as best I can with the head gasket there. And the reason that these are all over the board, like, you know, 30 thousandths, this one's higher or lower in the block by 5,000, that's quite a bit, is because when you're running stock rods, they just didn't really have good quality control back in the day. The rods are different lengths. The pistons, these are kind of not great pistons, but not horrible. They're the Keith Black high protected pistons, and the compression height might be a little bit different piston to piston. And also these older blocks, when they were assembling them and machining them and stuff, they didn't have that great of quality control with the blocks either. So you might get a deck surface that is milled a little bit of an angle. So you might have this piston over here being much closer to the deck surface as this one is. It's just the way it is. So you just got to kind of take what you can get. But to run these small shim head gaskets, it's tough to seal them up because you don't really have a lot of compression there. So you really need your cylinder heads to be flat, which they are, because I sent them out to the machine shop. They're flat, and the block to be flat too. And I did put a straight edge on this block, and luckily for me, both these banks here are very flat. So I'm not really worried about that head gasket leaking at all. I've talked to people that have run these, like my buddy Jason Dukes over at Dirt Race Life, and he says they work great. You just got to make sure that you have a flat surface on both sides and it's clean. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this block surface here really good. I'm going to take my rubber eraser wheel basically and just really give it a good polish and clean, and then hit it with some brake clean. And then to make things even a little more bulletproof, I'm going to hit these head gaskets with this copper gasket cement. You just spray both sides of the head gasket, and it kind of acts like a little bit of a sealant on top of the head gasket. And then to really make things work good, I went ahead and I bought some head studs. And so head studs are much better than head bolts. In my opinion, I like using head studs, especially in the older blocks, because instead of having to tighten a head bolt down and use this thread here in the block, which is literally just tapped into it, you know, it's not a hardened thread or nothing like that. Use a stud, you screw that in, and then you clamp it down with the fine threads up here, so you're really not twisting the threads down here. You just get better clamping force, and you get better clamping on the whole entire cylinder head and head gasket assembly. So that's really going to kind of give us our best chance of having this steel shim head gasket seal up on this old block surface. These guys are not ARPs, because ARPs are, as you know, pretty expensive. These are the cheapest ones I could find on Amazon. These things cost me 50 bucks with tax, just an Amazon special. And I did put them on the blog and put the cylinder head on there, and they all look great. You know, none of them are too short or too long, vice versa, it looked great. So this is the first time I'm running these, but I'm pretty confident they're gonna work good for me. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up real good right now, put some thread sealer on the threads, and then install all the studs, and then I'll show you guys what I'm gonna do when I put the heads on. All right, got the block deck surface here as clean as possible with the little rubber eraser wheel. And I just hit it real good with brake clean all up in the bolt holes here in the block, and also hitting the studs here really good with brake clean, because you got to put RTV or some kind of sealant on these threads when they go on the block, and you want to be completely dry on both ends, the thread side on the stud and in the block, so it will seal up good. You don't get any water coming through. I think that's the biggest part of this whole job here, is getting these guys nice and dry first before you start putting your ultra gray or whatever kind of sealant you're going to use on there. All right, just smear this on the threads real good. Just run them down to the bottom out. Pretty easy. Alright, so I found it easiest just to let this RTV dry up, and then go ahead and just go around the stud with the razor blade, and then it just comes right off. And then you don't have to worry about any kind of excess getting on your head gasket or it getting in the way for anything. Just makes it a little bit easier. So give it a couple hours and come back. Alright, just like that. Got the last little bit of RTV off. It's all dried up, cleaned up. Copper coated head gasket, a fresh brake clean on the head surface there. Slap her on. A little bit of Jack and Coke. This is some fun shit. right, got the ARP lube on all the threads and the washers and the nuts, and we're hitting it with one last 70 foot-pounds on the whole thing. All right, so I had this motor sitting here overnight after I torqued the head stud to 70 foot-pounds. I just checked them right now, a day later basically, and they all had a little more turn left in them. So I always like to let them kind of settle a little bit and then hit them again. And then with any new stud, this is what I like to do personally, is I'll go ahead now that they're all torqued down, and I'll go ahead and loosen one nut at a time. Just quickly back it off and then bring it back to 70. And what that does is it kind of stretching the head stud, and it seems like a lot of the manufacturers out there say that when you use a new fastener, it does have a little bit of stretch to it. So the way to kind of like prevent that from stretching when you're on the track is to cycle a couple times. So I'm gonna cycle it twice, retorque it, and then should be good to go. And that pretty much does it for the head assembly and building. So I'm gonna end this video now for you guys. Hope you enjoyed watching the little content I did provide for you. And the next video I do on this motor, like I said, I'll go ahead and show you guys how to degree the cam in and what I'm going to set it to, and then kind of just the other assembly part of it with the lifters, and I'll show you the push rods and how I measure the length of the push rods. So that's it, but thank you guys again for watching. Remember, it's bet and ain't broken. I'll see you next time here on Cherezian Racing.